Great. And I think we are good to go. I welcome you all. Very, very, very good evening to everyone. And before we begin, I would like to introduce myself. I am Dr. Aparna Sethi. I'm founder of Protege. And I'm so glad to share with you all that today only we got a recognition by one of the business magazine, the CEO story and our journey of success during COVID got covered in that, and we are completely into corporate. Thank you so much, Shankar. And we are into corporate training solutions business, and we cater to two kinds of people, or three rather. One is early jobbers, like those who have got around 4 to 5 years of experience in HR or from different field, and they want to shift to HR. They join us, and we give and offer courses like, HR analytics, HR generalist, and we are so proud to tell you that both the courses are affiliated with SHRN and HRCI. So that is something I'm very proud to share with all of you. And we have students. I cannot say students, but these are all young professionals from all over India joining in. We also give them placement and career assistance. So if any one of you have any job opportunities, especially in HR field, do kindly let me know. Another thing is corporate training division, and where we cater to corporate clients, and we conduct a lot of sessions on diversity, inclusion, uh, prevention of sexual harassment at workplace, sales training, theater-based drama training, which you must have seen the trailer just now, right? And many more soft skills. So these are the areas we covered. Another area of ProTouch is we are associated with XLRI and institutes like XLRI, IIM's Through Times Group, and we deliver a lot of, we are their knowledge partners with, IIM and XLRI to cater the executive training program. So, we believe in upscaling and self-development, which is very important for anyone's career, and we try to serve to that kind of a segment. And without wasting much time, I would like to take on today's session, and I would like to welcome today's guest. It's my honor and privilege to welcome Aparna Pathak. First of all, thank you so much for Aparna and Shankar for taking out, time from your busy schedule, and look forward to learn a lot from your experiences. So Aparna has done BSc from IIT Kharagpur, MSc from the same place, MBA from IIT Delhi. She served in, Indian Air Force commissioned officer for 6 years, and she comes with very diverse experience, I must say. She was also with Genpact as an operating leader, and then she took a position and she grew to assistant VP level, and she has got 6 years of experience from Genpact. Now, currently, she is with Novartis, and she's there since 5 years and looking after their DNI function. I welcome you, Aparna, to the session on the role of HR in creating inclusive workplace.
Thank
And
you so much, Dr. Sethi.
I would also like, thank you, Aparna. Thank you so much. I think that is one common name which we can see today. It's Aparna, right? And I would love to welcome Shankar. Shankar comes with an extremely very diverse role and with global exposure. He has more than 17 years of experience in HR and employee relations. He has anchored client-facing dynamic ER, and he has led as HR BP roles in India and US in various industries like software, financial services, BPO, and KPO. In his experience, if you look at, he has worked with Indosys as HR BP, Interglobe, Jindal Steel and Power Limited, and now he is currently with QX Private Limited as VP HR and Employee Relations. And his diverse experience certainly will bring lot of insights to today's topic, that is role of HR in creating inclusive workplace.
Thank you.
When I was talking to welcome Shankar, thank you so much. And when I was talking to Aparna, she said, I'm more into DI and Shankar is more into HR. And that is what we wanted, right? So without taking much time, I think let's start with today's discussion. And I would like to ask Aparna that, Aparna, most of the time we say diversity, inclusion, all the time, DNI, we keep talking about it. So what is it exactly? What is the difference between, diversity and inclusion? Because it is also observed that in Indian companies, majorly in India right now, we consider diversity only towards women. So kindly throw some light on that. Over to you.
So thank you, Dr. Sethi. And so I'm happy to talk about diversity and inclusion. And when we say diversity, each one of us is diverse, right? So when we talk about gender, even Dr. Sethi and I, we both are women and we both have the same name, but we are very different, right? So we bring very different thought process, different ways of thinking, different culture aspect as well. So when we talk about diversity, it means that different types, how a person is different from each another person, and that always has a lot of factors which can lead up to there. So it could be your gender, it could be a generation, it could be your ability, like for example you could be a person with disability, it could be your sexual orientation, it could also be your cognitive ways of thinking, or also your cultural diversity. So diversity is everything which is different from each other, and the way we think is a mix of all of these, right? If I'm a woman, I would think in a certain particular way, but if I'm a Bengali woman, I will think of it in a particular another way, right? So it's also how you have been brought up. So the cultural context becomes very important. So that is diversity. I would say that each one of us are different, and diversity talks about bringing all of these differences. Now, as you know, as HR professionals and otherwise, also you would have seen in our organization, while we talk about diversity, it can also lead to many a times conflict, or it could also lead to many a times people not being their authentic self. What they are, they will not bring out because of fear of ridicule. So, for example, I could be an introvert, and in a atmosphere where it is mostly the extroverts are, kind of they are having a lot of fun, I would feel excluded, and I really would not bring my thoughts, and I will not be speaking out about my what my thoughts are, and really not benefiting the organization with the diversity that I bring. So inclusion is all about making these diverse mix of people work, right? And it is not easy, and that is why there is a particular stream around this, around inclusion, that we talk about. So if I have to say in one word, and one sentence rather, diversity is giving a seat at the table, and inclusion is having a voice at the table. So, for example, I might I might have been hired because they're looking to improve the diversity, but I may not be part of the decision making, or I might be the only person there, and as a result, I will not feel very free to talk about. So this is one way I would say that diversity is having a seat at the table. Inclusion is all about having a say at the table. Another way you can remember, and this is something that Varnamaya has said, diversity is being invited to a party, and inclusion is being asked to dance. And now there's a third thing, which is called belongingness, and it talks about dancing as if no one is watching. So that is like, you can be your true authentic self because you belong to that, and you may not be a good dancer and still you're dancing because you can be a true authentic self. So in a nutshell, that is how I would define diversity and inclusion. And it is important. Why? It is not because it is the right thing to do. Of course, that is the right thing to do. You need to include a lot of different types of people. It is also a business imperative, because when you have different thought processes coming in, you will think differently. You might get a solution which is much more better than the solution when all of people are thinking at the same line. So there is no one, there's a group think. So there is, you may not have the best thought, And so it drives innovation. And so when a person, and obviously the gender one is very obvious, because gender is 50% of the population, but there are a lot of intersections of the diversity. So I might be a lesbian, a woman, a lesbian with sexual orientation different from the heterosexual that we know of, as well as I could be a person with disability, and I could be from the baby boomer generation. So there are so many things which are there. So one person is not defined by just one particular aspect of diversity.
I think you said it so well. Diversity is having a seat at table, and inclusion is having a voice. I think I was in one of the companies, and it unconsciously comes out sometimes. Now we have hired a lot of women, and now we also need to listen to them.
Yeah.
So that is the difference, that maybe out of sympathy, empathy, or you may hire someone, but are you giving them a place? In the similar way, there was one of the intern who is working in diversity and inclusion. She posted one photograph of a professor who is a transgender, and she joined the university. But after 3 months, she left because of the acceptance of her colleagues and peers. So maybe, diversity is something we may show it, that as an audit, we may show it, but whether the inclusion is there or not, it is something very important. Shankar, would you like to share any of your example or any experience where you experienced the inclusion, when you were handling different projects?
Sure, Aparna. And Aparna, you very well said, and you very beautifully explained difference between diversity and inclusion. I'm into HR operations, and I see the diversity examples day in, day out. I'll share one typical example. Somebody with the company for 15, 17, 20 years, and when they see the people from outside, either it is lateral hire or freshers, and then when these guys come up with very great and beautiful ideas, we see a lot of resistance in the older people, because it is, this the mix is trying to bring a change. So that is where I see the lack of inclusion. Specific example. So it is again age, generation, but I think tenure is very, very important in many organizations.
Yeah. So again, there is another diversity comes, people coming fresh to the workplace, and we hire fresh people so that we will have a hot blood in the organization. We will have more ideas. They will come up with fresh ideas, and that is where the resistance comes. I think this is something we all need to think about. Maybe out of I may be generic to say in this case, that is it the insecurity or what? We do not take ideas from others and open for the feedback. I think that is where we come to our another question, and I would like to ask to both of you. You can, Shankar can go, or Aparna. Years to implement, diversity and inclusion initiatives at workplace. Anyone can go. Okay,
sorry,
Shankar can go ahead.
So you're asking how to drive the D&I initiatives at the workplace. Sorry, there was a bit of a connection
Sometimes,
issue.
What happens? So, yes. I mean to say, you want to take diversity and inclusion initiatives at workplace, right? But there are many barriers comes into the picture.
Yeah.
At workplace. So what can be those, or you can also.
So that's very right. And I'll tell you, there are a couple of things with related to diversity and inclusion. First of all, we should not look at it as an initiative. It is something that should be part of your culture. Because if it is not part of your culture, it will die down as person who was driving the initiative. If the person leaves or moves into a different role, that will die down. So it has to be a strategic imperative or strategic requirement that you need to drive D&I as, because it is business sense. It is not that you're doing a welfare to the society, and the company is there to make money. companies are there to bring about change in the society. So they will be looking at their bottom line. And when people are looking at D&I as something that is going to help them in their business, they will drive it. And the leaders who are very aware of what drives innovation, because it's again a talent game as well, and all of you are HR professionals. It is a talent game. How do you attract people? People, if they don't feel that they can really be their own, authentic self in the organization, if it is not an inclusive organization, they will leave, and you will be at a loss. The organization will be at loss. However, we are not always inclusive, so why are we not inclusive? There are many reasons. Of course, there are structural changes that are required. So structure should be there to support your strategy that you're trying to drive. So the reason we are not always inclusive is, I would say, 4 broad categories. One is biases, both unconscious and explicit. Now, unconscious biases, I don't know how many of you are aware, but it is something that you're not aware that you have a bias against a particular thing, right? And that could be that you are not aware of it. The second is explicit, and the bias which is explicit, that that you have the bias and you're really not doing anything about it. So there is bias. Second is the leadership style. The leadership style, if it is, for example, if it's a very extrovert kind of a leader, the persons who are introvert would feel not part of the inner circle, so to speak, right? So it could be, it is not conscious, but it is that the leadership style has an impact. Third thing is how the teams are organized. If it is a remote teams that you have, and you have some people who are working in a remote location, and when you have meetings, so there are people who are in the conference room, and they're talking amongst themselves, and they're having discussions, which may not always be audible to the person who is sitting remotely. So that could also feeling that no one is listening to my voice, and I don't have a voice. So COVID actually has done a lot in terms of leveling this remote team thing. The final thing is actually the culture that I was talking about, and that is most important, where people feel safe to take up a point which is different from their leaders, different from their point, and no fear of retaliation. So which we call psychological safety, right? So these are the 4 key factors which can either hinder or be help with the inclusive environment. Ultimately, it boils down to self-awareness. Ultimately, it boils down to the self-awareness that you have, and awareness of, because we always tend to go towards what is our strong preferences, and we always tend to go towards that kind of people who reflect what we believe in, and that is but natural. So if you are self-aware and say that no, am I doing this because of what that person is bringing, or because that person is really thinking the way I think, and it is easier for me to navigate through the discussions. So broadly, these 4 things, and lack of self-awareness about all of these things is the reason that we may not have an inclusive culture.
Amazing. I just love that point, instead of who is saying, if we consider what that particular person is saying, if we focus on that, we will be more inclusive. But the moment we have who is saying, then the entire focus changes and all the unconscious biases starts coming in. Amazing. I think the 4 points which you mentioned, bias, leadership, remote team, how are you having your team, and very important, the culture. So these 4 points can be the hindrance, can be the barriers, as well as can be the stepping stones to create more and more inclusive work culture. Amazing. So Shankar, your viewpoints on the barriers, or what are the things we all need to work on?
Yeah, I think in terms of barriers, it is, if we go ahead and coach employees and educate employees, first of all, some of the employees and many employees may not be aware of the biases they have, subconscious biases. So if we educate them, coach them, do a proper induction and imbibe this in the culture so that they are at least aware, self-aware about the differences and how to work with the differences in a collaborative way, that can make a lot of difference in the organization.
Amazing. But I will take still one another question, and that is specially reserved for you, Shankar. And that is, most of the time, the research studies as well as many studies shows that getting the buy-in from the top management becomes the biggest hurdle as far as D&I initiatives are concerned. So, what is your say in that? How do you get that buy-in from top management?
Sure. So uh, I'll pick up the point Aparna was referring, that organizations are not for charity. They are in the business to make, of course, money. If we go to the
Right.
leadership and management and help them understand that diversity and inclusion not only brings innovation, it gives competitive advantage in talent, in hiring talent, retaining talent, and many other ways. So once the management or the board level executives, they are convinced that these initiatives will help and drive business growth, help the earnings per share, bring value to the shareholder, I think most of the job is done, because then they will see real value, because it is not one initiative or part of the culture. Then they will see that these diversity D&I is, bringing dollar revenues, and they're helping the growth trajectory in the organizations. Once we are able to do that, it becomes much easier to get the buy-in from the leadership and the board.
But sometimes, Shankar, I also feel such an unfortunate part it is that we have to prove that, the diversity is required, whereas getting a job opportunities or equal opportunities is the every human being's right. Am I right? And that is where, I read a book on diversity and inclusion. The author explained it very nicely, the MSW approach. Must, because there is a compliance requirement, and hence they will do it. S W is like, I want to do it because there are some business revenues I can do, right? And some people will take it as like, for example, that I want to do it. Come on, it's a social cause, and that is where the S comes into the picture. I think and the more as my self-awareness, self-responsibility for society, I think we can see the more and more changes coming in. But yes, still we need to show that because of diversity, how much gain and business we are able to do.
Right. And
I would also request that.
right. I would also like to add
Go
one
ahead,
thing.
Shankar, please.
In
Go
some
ahead.
countries, China, some countries in Europe, they have a mandate that certain percentage of women executives must be in their board. Otherwise, they have financial penalties. You'll be surprised to know some of the organizations prefer to pay the penalties and not comply. So I think the push factor or the legal push factor may not work, versus if we make them realize they are losing out on the business and it is straight revenue loss, that will work far better way than legal or regulatory compliances. That's my opinion.
Amazing. I mean, that is great insight you have given, that people prefer to pay the penalties but not ready to hire. But we have in India, we have laws in on board level, and all these things are there. And I think it is working out somewhere. Somewhere the compulsion is also working so that people will try, people will overcome their biases and will say that, okay, if we hire people, it is fine, because now, we talk about transgenders and also openly now, and it is proving that what matters at work is my talent and not my sex. So I think that is amazing. I would also request the participants to give whatever questions you have, please keep typing in the chat box so that, whenever it is possible, I will certainly take a few questions. So that will also help us, to have your viewpoints and your questions, what are there in your mind. So I would like to ask Aparna. Aparna, since you're working in this area since a very long time, is there any kind of models or any kind of, processes which you have followed to implement D&I in the companies?
So I've been very fortunate that I work in an organization like Novartis, which has a very structured approach to diversity and inclusion. So, while we have, so what we have done, and we have a commitment straight from our CEO and the board. And this is when we talk about, so Novartis is a Swiss multinational pharmaceutical company, but we have a huge presence in India as well. So we are the third largest location after US and Switzerland for Novartis in terms of the number of people working. And what we do is we follow whatever is the global, what is being done at global. So we don't have, we will not say, oh, we don't have enough women in India to meet our pledge, that because we have made a pledge. So I think the way we do it is we put structures in place to effect the change that we want to see. So for example, when we talk about parental leave, in Novartis, we have a gender neutral parental leave. So and that is implemented already in 48 countries. By next year, we will be implementing in all the countries which is there. It has been implemented in India as well. So in India, we have men also getting 6 months of parental leave.
Oh.
Yes, which was introduced last year, July. So, and we have parental leave. We also have for adoption. We have for surrogacy. We also have it for people of same-sex couple. So I know it is not legalized. The same-sex marriage is not legalized. But we are saying that if people are adopting, the relationship is with the child, not within the couple. So we have adoption leave as well. So so that is where we are taking out the systemic barriers which are there. So if a man is taking a 6 months off, he will face the same kind of anxiety that a woman faces when she goes on maternity, because she doesn't know whether she will come back and have that. So we were not very sure how much uptake will it be there. And I'm pleasantly surprised that a lot of young generation people actually are taking parental leave. I mean, people who are becoming fathers as well who are taking this leave. Our insurance policy is also again gender neutral as well. So all of these things that we are talking about is some of the structural changes we are doing. In addition, we have done a lot of pledges that we are doing. So obviously, these are policy changes that you're doing where everybody will feel included. But ultimately, it comes down to how people on the ground feel, right? Obviously, these are important. But how is it that we are? So we are going through a cultural transformation journey in Novartis. And this is all about, making each moment that matters to each of our associates. So that is how we are trying to do this. We have made 2 pledges with the United Nations. So we have something called, I don't know how many of you have heard of, which we call EPIC, which is Equal Pay International Coalition. And this is under United Nations ILO, where we have pledged that we will implement all the provisions of EPIC by 2023 across all the locations in Novartis. Now, EPIC means pay equity. That means equal pay for equal value of equal work. So we are, so we are doing at pay equity. We are also going for pay transparency. We are also saying that when we are hiring, we will not look at historical salary. And why is that important? Because women cannot negotiate their salary. Not only women, a lot of men also are not able to negotiate effectively. So we are saying we are building certain capability. We have certain benchmark which internal associates are already having. So we will be offering what we have as our benchmark. Obviously, it will not be same as what we have, but because it could be that the qualifications are a bit different, so obviously we want to give access. We are not looking at historical salary while making new offers. So this is another.
One second. I think this deserves a big round of applause. Can we give the reactions to Navotesh? I mean, this is something really, really great. Can we have some applaud? Like, because I personally suffered because my past salary was something else, and when I joined, there was something else, and they said that it's a restructure. We have to do salary, so either you leave or you be with this particular salary, which is not fair. I mean, amazing.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and then the final one under that is having a balanced gender gender representation in management. And so we are saying that what happens is that people say, oh, we see a lot of women, but when you're seeing the women, they are not at the senior level. You're seeing the women at the lower level. So if I look at it, maybe I would be having 50-60% at the lower level women. But if I look at management, it really falls significantly. So we are committed to having around 40 to 60, because we say balance. We don't want more women or we don't want more men. So anything between 40 to 60% is what we say is a balanced representation.
So, are you getting women executives on higher level? Because most of the time we have also heard that we have positions, but we don't have supply.
Yeah, and that's also a myth, I would say, because we don't seem to be looking for the women. So for us to do that, what we are doing is there are two things that we are doing with respect to balanced gender management. We are saying that whenever you are hiring for any senior position, any management position, you need to have a balanced gender slate. And you need to have a diverse panel. And we are tracking that on a regular basis. Is it easy? No, it is not, because at times you really, especially with the location that you are in, you may not get that. So for example, we are told that because Hyderabad, where our offices are located, will not have all of those kind of skill sets. If you're looking for it in maybe NCR region or Mumbai or Bangalore, you might get it. So so obviously now with COVID situation, we will hopefully have a better chances of getting those women into our organization who are not in Hyderabad and who can continue to work from wherever they are situated. So one is EPIC. Then we have also signed up on the LGBTI rights, which is human rights under United Nations. We will soon be talking about disability strategy for Novartis, which we hope to sign with United Nations later this year. We are also looking, when we are talking about these are diversity, how to increase these diversity. We are also thinking that it is not only us, we also have to impact our society. And so we are looking at diversity in clinical trials, which is where we are looking at how we have medicines for all group, not a particular group, which is where we do the clinical trials. And then we also look at diversity with our suppliers. What are the suppliers doing? Are they really encouraging diversity of gender, LGBTI, and disability, etc.? So this is again something that we are doing. Then on inclusion, we are saying, let us create a safe environment space. So we have a concept which we are propagating, which is called Unboss. And maybe people can look this up. This is a book. There's a book written by I don't remember the author's name, but it's called Unboss. And there we are saying that we are empowering our associates, right? So this is something that we are looking at as part of creating psychologically safe environment, as well as having listening dialogues, which we say that let us listen to each other without any judgment, without any conclusion. Let us listen, let people vent. So that is something that we are.
I love the term which you use, psychological safety. Yes, physical safety is important, but I think the kind of attacks which we get sometimes unconsciously, unintentionally, sometimes people are programmed in that way, and we need to address that more on daily basis. That how do we how do we feel safe when I'm raising the voice or when I'm contributing? Because most of the time, yes, we need to address this, that we tend to become very judgmental, right? Amazing, Aparna. That's a great thing and great initiative. Hats off to companies like Navotesh, and very important. We should be also able to, we can see a lot of changes happening in, US based companies, but we also need to have a lot of changes in not only India, but all companies, small, big, or, all companies. Again, most of the time we think that pharma may not be that kind of a company, but yes, you have really great policies and procedures at place. On that note, Shankar, I have one question for you, because HR plays a major role in all this, right? So how HR can play a role in creating inclusive workplace? So we are not talking about now, diversity. Diversity is one thing which we address, that yes, we need people, but how do we create inclusion? That is most important, because the retention can happen only if there is an inclusion.
Sure. So I think inclusion is more of culture, and it takes time to build an inclusive culture. HR can use the formal and informal influence to change the culture towards inclusiveness. So I will say formal authority or formal influence is one. HR can use the informal influence to make that change happen.
Mhm. Could you please elaborate more on informal
Okay,
influence?
I'll take one example. Let's say when I say informal, let's say we have a leadership meeting. We have 10 or 15 guys, and if you want to drive some agenda on inclusion, one is of course you can send a presentation. You can ask for their buy-in. Other one is when I say influence and personal power, if I have personal connect with most of the leadership members, I can go and speak to them one-on-one and influence them uh, to get their buy-in towards inclusive culture. So it is more of a personal interconnect and personal relationship to influence the members of the leadership team and board and drive it down to the bottom level to drive the change.
Okay, that's great.
If I may add in over here, I
Oh,
think
yes.
HR is actually the conscience keeper of the organization. So the thing is, HR has to be very independent and also call out when they see situations where it is people are being there is a retaliation against people. If they are speaking up or taking a view which is not prevalent, the majority view, right? So HR has a great role to play in creating a safe environment for people to be what they are, and people to be able to express what they feel. Because if you don't, it will be always inside you, and you will keep thinking about it and really not be very productive in your workspace. So I think HR has to be very independent. HR has to have its own identity and not align it with the management, because if that happens, then people will not reach out to HR for anything that they feel is a very non-inclusive behavior. So HR has to create that kind of an atmosphere where people can reach out and talk about things that they think needs to be changed, and giving that assurance that it will be confidential. And then HR has to own it and bring out those things without naming people, saying that there have been instances and whatever, some of the conversation that needs to happen. So HR has to be very independent of the management. They need to be the gatekeeper so that employees feel very safe and go and talk to them.
Sure, but I agree, and have a very strong ethics and code of conduct and anti-bullying policies and procedures in place, so that employees feel, of course, safe to express their thoughts. Sure.
Here I have one thing to contribute, that we do have policy. For example, as per constitution, we cannot deny anyone. We cannot reject anyone, on the basis of XYZ. But unfortunately, we follow our societal norms and our culture so strictly than even our constitution. So problem is this: sometimes, we have policies and procedures, but do we really follow? Many people on document it doesn't come. Like, for example, even people when they're leaving your organization, they never say that because I'm feeling excluded, because I don't have a voice, because I feel targeted, and that's why hence I'm leaving. They leave because of personal. The reason is personal. You know, most of the time during our exit interviews. So sometimes data will not match with our reality, and we need to introspect more on that. And more importantly, again, unfortunate part is D&I people think it's only HR's job. It is everyone's job, every individual's job, that we need to be inclusive in all, at home, in society, and even at workplace. I think that is very important, right? On that note, let's take a lot of questions are there. Shankar, there is a question for you. Shankar sir has asked, talked about coaching people to overcome biases when we might be able to coach people who are unconsciously biased. How can we coach and train someone who is biased by choice? Amazing question. Amazing.
So, of course, coaching mostly helps when people are unconsciously biased. But even after coaching and after self awareness, if somebody is biased by choice, then we have other processes in HR. It can include disciplinary actions, or it can include plugging behavioral competencies in the performance management, so that desired behavior is visible and seen. Because we cannot have uh, a conscious bias again in the organization. That is the behavior which nobody would like to tolerate. So if
Hmm.
coaching doesn't happen, or if it doesn't happen in a win-win situation, then it may happen that we may have to take strong actions or disciplinary actions if somebody is really biased.
Absolutely. I think there has to be a zero tolerance level when it
Correct.
comes to certain things. And if someone is doing intentionally,
Yeah.
then coaching and training is fine. But I think there will be a warning, and otherwise
Yeah.
there will be
And
some
yes.
actions will be taken. Aparna, anything from your side?
I think organizational change cannot happen unless there's a personal change or the individual change.
Hmm.
So if you feel that this is a behavior that is not what the organization is moving towards, then I
Hmm.
think you need not to have that employee with you. I mean, that is the position that you have to take. That our organization is an inclusive organization, and if you have a conscious bias, and if you even if because see, if a person has this bias. Um, if it is unconscious, you can coach and make them aware,
Hmm.
make a self-aware person, right? But if it is a
Hmm.
conscious bias, you really cannot do it unless it is something that will really impact that person. So for example, in our company, what we are saying that if you are not aligned to what the culture that we are going, then this may not be the
Hmm.
organization for you. So it is as
Hmm.
simple as that being told by, and this is being told by HR, chief HR officer, right? The CHRO of Novartis made this comment that, organizational change cannot happen if there is no individual change. And if you feel that this is not something, that culture that does not resonate with you, then maybe this is not the organization for you.
Absolutely. Amazing. Thank you so much for that. Now, there is another question: how to manage millennial workforce as a part of DNI initiative? Yeah, because there are many youngsters, they want to be a part of DNI team, but their first job start with recruitment, and they may not get a chance to be a part of DNI. So, यहीं पे exclusion शुरू हो जाता है. So, how do we work on that? Very nice. Shankar, would you like to say anything on this?
Um, of course, I already touched upon when I say millennial, especially the young crowd coming in and they see
Hmm.
that their voices are not heard, or
Hmm.
we have tenured employee in the organization. Uh, Again, it's cultural thing. It takes a lot of efforts to change the culture. Parna, would you like to add on something here?
Yeah.
That is true. And the thing is, when we say millennial workforce, right, what do we how do we integrate them into the workforce? And we have to understand that what they bring is different. And if we have to change our ways of working and accommodate that, I think that is what inclusion is all about, right? So if you are able to when you say, if you consider it as a problem, it will remain a problem. If you consider it as a different ways of working, then it becomes a different thing. So it is how you look at it as a concept. If you have a millennial workforce, remember this: you will also have a child at some point in time, or if you might already have some of you might already have the child. Think of that person going into the workforce. How would you like that? What would your always make it personal, always make it personal, and then you will get the solution. That if I was in that shoes, what I would have, what would be my expectation, and talk to them. And I think this is something that we see in our, for example, Hyderabad site has nearly 80% is Gen Y and rest is Gen X, whereas our global workforce is also baby boomers. So how do you bridge this gap? When we are talking to global people, we have people who are Indian Gen Y talking to baby boomers who are, in the Western society or mostly there. So there's a culture difference, there's a generational difference. So
Right.
it will work if you want to make it work. So don't think that all millennials are same. Don't think that all Gen Y are same. Everyone is unique, and that is the mindset that you should start with.
I would like to mention one example here. One student of mass communication, and one combination was there. His name is Akshay Tyagi. You can also follow him on LinkedIn and all. And he worked during his internship and he worked in a project called the Others. So he worked in depth that he had a different insights as far as transgenders and minority is concerned. And he kept working. That internship gave him so much interest in that. He kept working in that project. So he started working. He also did a research paper on the theory of exclusion. Okay. So, and after passing out, his first job was on DNI. He became a part of HR team and he became a part of DNI, right? And what I'm trying to say is, sometimes if you have a passion for that particular area, you can start working in research and take some projects on your own, right? And prove that you are the right person for the team. And I think nothing can stop you. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that can also work. Yeah. Now, Praveen is asking another question here that in country like India, where society is men dominated, companies are looking for only candidates from top B school with pleasant personality, good communication, etc. And minimum requirements. So how can we implement DNI here? So this is different kind of diversity people are, Praveen is talking about. That is about taking people from all the B schools and not
Absolutely.
very specific.
And the thing is, yeah, so remember this, India is, how many crores, right? We are 1.3 billion, right? Or 1.4 billion people. And how many of them actually go into those B schools or the top this thing? That doesn't mean that there is no more talent. It could be that on that particular day, you did not really do well in your competitive exam and you did not get through. So remember this, a lot of these, I don't know, some of the people who are really successful may not be from your top B schools or top IIMs. It is also the opportunity that you're giving. If you always look for polish and everything, you will only get polish. You may not get a lot of depth, right? So which may be required for you to do it. So it is again a mindset. So if you don't change the mindset, you will continue to do continue with those pieces. Remember, not everybody is able to speak English, but that doesn't mean that they cannot contribute in a very effective way. So I would think that it is more of a mindset change that is required from people, rather than thinking that, if I get all of this, because, then people don't want to really invest in developing the people. I'll get paka pakaya thing mil jayega, you know, people who speak
Right.
good English, everything. So so then they will not have to invest in that. So that is what I think is there. But remember that, you know, you only get that entry. After that, you know, what you do is need not be commensurate with what you are capable of or what you bring to the table. So this is something that you might want to think of as a change in mindset, and think of it. Will you yourself recruit somebody who is not from this thing? If you will do that, then you can be the change that you want to see.
There is another very interesting question has come up. That is, why isn't age considered as a diversity bracket? Because after some time, people say, you know, over 32 and all, getting jobs start becoming difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it is a diversity
So,
that is there. I mean, see, this is so it is a diversity topic that is being considered, and people are actually actively looking for people who are older bracket as well. Yes, people want to hire fresh graduates because, first of all, you know, you can they're more, they feel that they're more full of energy and they are fresh and, you know, more enthusiastic. Whereas there's also people who have a lot of experience and also the will to learn something new or different or continue to what they're doing. So it is a diversity that is there, but maybe it is not consciously looked for when you're hiring. But many
And
companies who have it as a strategic imperative will look at different age group as well.
right.
yes,
And I think demand supply also plays some role here, because as people age at 30, 35, 40, they go up, most of them go up higher in the organization. So the hierarchy, the number of positions in the top is less. In middle and in bottom, the positions are more. So it becomes really tough in terms of demand and supply, because the demand at the top management and middle management is much lower than the demand in the bottom. So if you look at demand and supply, that also plays a major role if you consider age in DNI.
you know, Shankar, from where this point may also come, that is, many women take a break, career break, you know, around 4 years, 5 years. Now the time has gone down, but still there are many women take break. And now, you know, at the age of 32 and all, they want to join back. But problem is this: if you look at the counterpart, that is men, they have reached to some level, and while hiring, you know, even though they are ready to start from the scratch, the appointment is not happening just because of the age, not because of the caliber. So that is another angle comes into the picture, which we need to consider. Any thoughts, Aparna?
Yeah, I mean, see, it is because people feel that they will not be able to change if they are already set in their ways, and that is also true because, you know, maybe I mean, I have made a lot of changes in my career. I mean, I have not followed one thing because I went with
I've seen
what I
that.
wanted. I went with
Yeah.
what I wanted to do at that point in time, and it worked out. It doesn't that mean that there is no risk associated with it? Obviously, there is a risk associated with it, but people have to be okay with that. Many a times, you know, a lot of people have a lot of commitment, financial commitments as they grow older. You know, you have your EMIs, you have your children education, etc., and they are unwilling to make changes. And, you know, it is a safe environment to, you know, it is familiar environment. Whatever you're doing, you think that you has worked so far. If you continue to work that way, it will work further as well. So that is another thing that that kind of hampers people not also, first of all, willing to change, as well as others willing to invest, thinking that, you know, they will change and mold into the culture that we have in our organization.
Right. I think looking at the time, there is, yeah, still 3 minutes to go. So we can, I think Prerna has asked this question to Aparna: is LGBT not included in EPIC?
No, EPIC is Equal Pay International Coalition. So it talks about gender parity. There is a separate pledge under United Nations, which is around human rights for LGBTQ. So that is a different pledge. And that is where the human rights for LGBTQ people are, ensured.
Okay. So I think that is what these are the questions we have. When people experiment, become inclusive and train and change the mindset, they come as Anand Kumar of Super 30. Okay, so that is what is the intake. Any other question if we have missed out?
What is IAT?
Even if we convince top management about strategic benefits.
There is this question from Madhushri. Can you still?
We lost you in between.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you please tell us.
I saw one question around IAT.
Okay.
What is IAT? I don't know.
Yes. Can you throw some light on IAT and how effective? IAT is the test you are talking about?
Okay.
Gender sensitization test is also there, conducted by Harvard. Madhushri. Okay. So this is the test. Test.
Okay.
I forgot the long form of this. Implicit, that is what it is, the test. Yeah. So you can take the test. Yes. You can take the test from organization perspective. You yourself take it first. It shows how inclusive you are yourself. And if you find it suitable, you can use that test for your in your company as well. Okay, so that is what is I will give the insight. Do we have to have a need of separate role for D&I officer in HR? So do we really require separate D&I person? Generally, it is a team.
It depends on the organization and how much emphasis they're putting on D&I. So for example, many companies do have a chief diversity officer, and sometimes they're reporting directly to the CEO, and sometimes they're reporting to the the chief HR officer of the company, right? So this is how it depends. So it is because it is totally. HR has a lot of business partnering aspects that they do, right? And as well as talent development and so on and so forth. So it might make sense to have a separate D&I person to drive the agenda. So yeah, that is something that I feel is better if you are really very serious to drive it in a very structured way, where it is not something that is an add-on to somebody else's job description, because then it becomes 30% of 20% of that person's time, and then it becomes not top of the mind recall for the management of the company.
I think it is just a similar way. It depends on the scale of the company, how big it is, how many number of employees are there, and even though number of employees are there, is it their priority?
Yeah. So right? I'll have to take leave, Aparna. I have a call right now at 5 o'clock.
I think it is 4 o'clock. Yeah, it is. Sorry, it is 5 o'clock exactly. And that is where we come to the end of the session. So I will not take much time of yours. I think you all have solved their queries and you have given a lot of insights on D&I. And I personally thank Aparna and Shankar for taking out time. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. I have also shared our D&I. Aparna, if you want, I can understand. So if you want, you can take a leave.
Thank you so much, Shankar. Nice meeting you. Dr. Sethi,
thanks, Aparna. Really nice meeting you. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on this platform. Appreciate it.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. So we work in D&I in a very extensive way. I personally conduct a lot of sessions and corporate training programs in prevention of sexual harassment, as well as inclusive leadership, gender sensitization. And we have also created one WhatsApp group in, especially for D&I. So if you have a lot of interest in D&I, then only join, I will say. Otherwise, don't join. We do not want to have a lot of people there, but we want to have a really passionate people in D&I. They can be there. We run a course called Train the Trainer in Posh, right? If you are interested, do get in touch with us. Our number is 8800003366, and also feel free to visit our website www.protouchpro.com and remain in touch with me. And yes, thank you, Nipun. He has also shared corporate training brochure with you. If you have any help, anything, kindly let us know. And we are so glad that, you know, people like Shankar, Aparna, and there are people who are working in LGBT, like we had Celia last time, who has a fluid gender. She's a man, she's a woman, and I work in a lot of areas because that is our passion. We would love to serve you anywhere, anytime, right? On that note, let's say thank you to all of you. Thank you for joining in and spending 1 hour. I hope you got a lot of insights on this subject. And thank you, Shankar, once again. Thanks a
Sure.
lot.
Thank you, Aparna, for inviting me. And I would like to add one thing in the end. Diversity is all about numbers, and inclusion is
Sure.
making those numbers count. Thank you.
Very nice. I think that's the best thing you can say. Ending on that note is very, very important. And I will also keep that in mind always. Thank you. Thank you so much, Shankar. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
time to take a leave. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.